Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be talking about finding the surface area of a rectangular prism. And in this case, we're going to be using what's called a net. A net is a two-dimensional drawing that represents a three-dimensional figure. Best way I can think about it is if you've ever had to break down a box, in other words, you want to flatten it out without damaging it, you've created a net of the three-dimensional object. Now, there's some things that in the real world are not going to exactly happen. So what we have to think about here is instead of like unfolding a cardboard box on Christmas Day, what you've done is you've cut along edges. So those folds that everything overlaps on don't exist in a net, at least in a, we'll call it rudimentary net. So if you want to, look up that word, rudimentary. It's kind of a fun word, not only to say, but to understand. So, what we're doing today is we're going to be talking about how we can actually find the area of this object or shape, and it actually tells us the same surface area for this shape. So area and surface area are actually the same thing. It just tells us whether we're talking about 2D, that's area, or 3D, surface area. So when you have a question over surface area, you're dealing with a 3D object. Luckily, we can turn it into a 2D. So what we want to do is we want to look at the individual sides of this. And what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that we have cut along the sides that I'm drawing on now. When we do that, and here, and here, and here, and here. When we do that, we can unfold it and it becomes this shape. And if we find the area here, then that is the surface area here. So I want to relate that here's the bottom of our shape to begin with. So we know on the bottom, this side had to be 7. But we also know because this side is 4, this also had to be 4. All right. So the next step is I'm going to look for the top. I like to deal with parallel sides. So here's the top. So the top also, because this was parallel, this line right here, or sorry, this one here when cut was actually this guy here. When it's cut, that means this is 7 because they're parallel and bisected by parallel lines. It has to be the same length. In other words, they're parallel and these two, and they're cut by parallel lines, okay? Now, that also means that these follow the same rules because this line and this line are parallel and they're cut by these, which are parallel, which means this also has to be 4. All right, we've got our top and our bottom done. Let's work on our back and our front. That's always a little bit harder. So we got our back as a rectangle back here. So that's going to be my orange. And then we've got our front, which is our rectangle here. Most people forget about the back, honestly, and it's easy to lose track of, but we got to remember both of them are there. Now, what we know about our front is that this is 7. And we know the back has to be 7 for 2 reasons. Number 1, front and back are parallel, but also these 2 lines here are parallel, and they have to be the same length, but because these 2 lines are parallel, so this right here also must be a length of 7, as well as that. Well, we also know that the height here, which is this, is 3. Well, because this height, or this line is parallel to that, that's also 3. And because it's parallel, it's 3 here. And because this one is parallel, that's 3. And I know that's 3. So right now I'm just going through and I'm labeling everything that I know. The last thing that's left is trying to figure out the sides. So I'm going to shade in the sides so we can take a look at it. And see, it's kind of messy. That's why I do this one at a time, because I'm not trying to shade this in and then look at all my sides. I'm going to shade it in as I go along because things start to disappear visually for me anyway. So what I know is the side had to be 3, which I already have. Then this side and this side are parallel, so that means these have to be a length of 4. Now I have everything I need in order to solve this. So what I'm going to do is just that. I'm going to take 4 times 7 because the area of a rectangle is equal to length times width. Well, I have my length of 7 times 4, which is equal to 28. So the area of this rectangle is 28. Well, this is also 4 and 7, so this has got to be 28. Then I can come down here and say, well, length times width is 7 times 3, which is 21. And front and back are parallel, so that means this also has to be 21. And then we have 4 times 3, and where am I? There we go. So I have my 4 times my 3. Just trying to color coordinate here. Now, 4 times 3 is 12, and both sides have to be the same because I not only have 4 times 3, I know they're parallel. So now I just add up. I have 28 plus 28. And then I'm going to be adding 21 and 21. And then I'm adding my 12 and 12. Oh, don't know where that number was going to, so 12. This is 24. This is 42. This is 56. And again, I'm adding them all. So 56 plus 42 is 98 plus 24. 98 plus 24, that's going to be a 2, 11, 12, 122. Now the last bit of this is how long was each one? Well, remember we multiplied. So since this was inches and this was inches, this is actually 21 inches squared, which means I added a bunch of square inches, so that's my final answer there. 122 square inches, or 122 inches squared. Remember, guys, if you have any questions, email those to me tonight so I can look over them. I'll get back to you if I can. More likely, it'll just become part of the lesson tomorrow so we can make sure to get it answered, whether during class in the lesson or one-on-one afterwards. Stay safe out there, guys, and we'll see you next class.